But it's okay, because then, if everybody would speak Spanish, we could do it in Spanish, but it's okay. So we prepare it anyway in English. And we wanted to do this talk since some months ago, because we think it's a topic which is very important, something that has been happening in Mexico since many years. Our main focus was maybe in the first step to talk about femicides in Mexico, which is a very hard topic. And because it's very hard, we just didn't want to talk just about that. So we wanted to give a little bit of the context around it, and not being able to give all the answers. We will give just some information that we could collect the last time.
Yeah.
And
something. We're not just experts in this topic, and like we only collect information, and we were interested in gender differences, and especially in these femicide cases. And we try to make
give no clues, and we will be open for the discussion at the end. So this is mainly for us to open a discussion, also to listen to your opinions, and to think, to share opinions, and especially to make awareness of the topic. So we are, of course, not expert at all. I was doing mathematics, she's doing economics, so we are not even not working directly with social topics, but we are very interested on it. So anyway. So, yeah.
well, this is the outline.
So that was the introduction. We will start with a socio-economic context, and then a bit of a cultural context and traditions in Mexico, how to say, and then we will go to the feminicides in general.
Okay, first we wanted to make like a brief introduction of gender gaps and gender difference in Mexico, and there's been like I like this phrase: high levels of socioeconomic inequality, extreme levels of violence, deep roots of patriarchal attitudes, and a machista culture are the common causes of factors that continue fomenting a state of violence, in which women are still victims of violence. Now I'm going to present some data about gender gaps, but I don't want to imply that this is like direct causation between violence and this. I just want to present like the general idea about some topics in education, income, and some other things. Okay, first, poverty in Mexico. How is it now, and how is it distinguished between men and women? Half of the population in Mexico is in poverty, basically. But this is a graph by Coneval. Coneval is the official institution who makes like the official data for poverty, and this represents, in this line it's the income, and in this line are like some social rights, like having housing, right conditions, health system, education. And you're considered poor if you don't have the income, like enough income to satisfy your basic needs, and if you have at least 3 or more of these social rights that you're going to fulfill. And yeah, 9.9% of the extremely poor are women, and only 9.8% are men. And we can see that actually women are the ones who are, there's a higher number of women that are poor compared with the men, but only in the income part. If we consider the social rights in this part, actually women are better off than men. The data that Coneval provides gives you like 1/3 of the households are headed by women. And that households headed by women are more prone to being vulnerable in different aspects, in income, in education, and whatsoever. In 2012, nearly half of the female-headed households were extended. This implies that more people within the household, then the same income, it's more poor. And households headed by women are more prone to lack of access to food because they have the same income, well, they have established income, and then divide the income by all the members of the household. And then they have less money to buy food, because also women earn less money than men. And about the income thing, women in Mexico actually earn less money than men, but this, I want to see some occupational segregation to see where women are actually employed. This is a graph by the International Organization of Employment. And here we can see the green are men and the red and orange are women. And this is a comparison between Bangladesh, Mexico, and Sweden. And we can see that, for example, women are not part, or not in a significant way, part of the armed force. And women are actually employed in services and like less paid work jobs. And then men are mainly employed in public services or management or professional activities, which actually led to a higher income because these occupations are. Okay, yeah. In this part of the economic participation of the income, economic participation of women is actually less than of the men. This is worse among the poor. Actually, women work less, like the participation of women in the labor force is less between the poor than in the middle income class. And poor women are the majority among those without contract or that are working unpaid or houses have like the no, it's the floor, it's not in good conditions, then it's 2. And then if I don't eat enough to like enough calories or whatever, then I have 3. And if I don't have like, there's other components of housing, and the other one is education. If I have certain age and I haven't finished my primary school, then I will feel this education. Water? Yeah, that's the other condition of health. Yeah. Water and sanitation first. And there's, yeah, I think that's 6. And yeah, despite having the same schooling, like if women and men are actually working and they have the same schooling level, wages of employed women are actually lower than those for men. For every 100 pesos that a man earns, if they only finish primary school, 100 pesos for earned by men, the women only earns 78. So the gap is 22 pesos between this. But this is lower at higher levels of education. If a man and a woman, after having their bachelor's degree, are working, a man earns 100 pesos and the women only 92. So the gap is less, but still there's a gap. Oh yeah, this doesn't account for this occupational segregation. So it's just a difference. But of course, since men are working in more higher income jobs, this could change. Yeah, in this one, we see here it's the poor and the non-poor. This is a comparison between 2008, 2010, 2012. And this is how which are the income sources. And the blue line is direct sources. That's income, like what my wage. And the indirect sources is subsidies and transfers made by the government. So among the poor, we see here it's male and female. Yeah. And then here we can see that actually poor women depend more on subsidies and transfers. They depend less on their income because they are less. But among those non-poor, actually this is still the gap, but this is shorter. Women, especially poor women, have greater dependence on resources from social programs, and 90% of the income of men came from his work, salary or pension. among poor women, it's only 70%. And especially social programs in Mexico are focused to women. So the dependence, of course, it's higher because of that. Like, have you heard of oportunidades, progresa, solidaridad? And now Prospera is actually focused to women. And some theories said that these kind of programs are actually creating a dependence of that income. That men send the women, like the wife, yeah, go and get the program because you're women and then you can get more money. But actually it's just they are creating this dependence, but they are not working on getting out of poverty. Another difference is the use of time. On average, women spend on housework between 10 and 20 hours a week more than men. That's huge. Yeah, and they work or they invest more hours in unpaid work, like taking care of the kids or sick people or disabled people in the family, because that's their job. So
one remark is that these 10 or 20 hours doesn't depend on poverty or non-poverty.
Yeah,
it is in general.
It's also independent of employed and unemployed?
Yes. Actually, women that are employed have like this double, yeah, actually they work more in the house, yeah. And this is a comparison between OECD countries. The orange are the women and the blue ones are the men. And here is Mexico, and here is the average of the OECD. Women actually spend 53 hours per week, or I don't know if it's per week, but 53 hours per week in the household and housework, but men only 15 hours. So the difference is huge. And the difference between the OECD average countries is only like 20 hours, like 15 hours or 20 hours. If we see the time that they spend in sports or doing television, this reverts, because women spend more time doing sports, free activities, sleeping, and watching TV.
Men.
Yeah. Yeah. And now that's like the part. But when does women start to be considered as people who can vote and actually do people? In the Constitution, the first Constitution, in the Constitution of 1970, the right to vote for women was not in the Constitution. Why? Because actually there is a text that says they don't need it, they don't want it. There is no statement in this regard. If they don't ask for it, we don't give them. They specify like citizen in general, but it's not. Actually, a woman wanted to be like president of one city, and she won, but they said, like the court, or I don't remember who, said like, no, this is not possible. You're a woman, so you cannot be president. In 1947, women were given the right to vote, but only in municipal elections. Until 71 years ago, the women had the right to vote and to be voted. And some laws in this regard about these gender differences. Mexico passed the general law on women's access to a life free of violence in 2007, and now the 32 states passed similar laws between 2000 and 2013. Now everybody said like, okay, you have the right to a free life.
So the Constitution doesn't guarantee a life free of violence for the whole population?
By itself, no.
Actually, the International Court said that Mexican state failed given this. But even though we have these laws and whatsoever, the recognition of the women, it's not the, I mean, we are equal in the law, but in the daily life, it's not like that, as we've seen in the incomes and like life and like use of time and everything.
Oh. So you can do that. We thought we start the cultural part with a nice, maybe I change again.
Yeah.
With a nice citation
Como agua para el chocolate.
Exactly. So if you know the movie Sus Vidas Chocolate, I think it's a Mexican movie which was also famous here in Germany some years ago. And it's a story about a woman who is obliged to stay by her mother and take care of her. And so she doesn't have the right to get married. And it plays in the time of the revolution, so at the beginning of the last century. And the text says, the movie says exactly like that. So you are the youngest of my daughter, and it's up to you to take care of me until my death. So that's the mother's saying. And Tita lowered his head, and with the same force with which her tears fell on the table, her fate fell on her. And from that moment he knew from that moment on, her and the table that could not modify a little bit the direction of these unknown forces that compelled at one to share with Titas his fate, getting your bitter tears from the moment she was born, and to the other to take the absorption and definition. So there was no choice for her to do that. There were many places in Mexico which was like that, and I'm sure there are still places where this is still like that. So this is the beginning of everything. So just a few points to remark. So that the reflection of this situation is that we have a patriarchal system in Mexico. So the men are the most important persons in the country, not only on law. So the law just was a small reflection of that only men were the ones who had the right to vote and to be president and to be elected. But in general, it is a patriarchal system. So at work, the men are the ones who have the important jobs and so on. They are the directors of the companies. But it goes further. I mean, it's not only in Mexico. So we could start with the definition of violence. So if we think about violence, it is usually related to men. So if we think of a fight, it's only men who are fighting. If we think of a war, soldiers are mainly men. So violence is associated in general in the whole world, in the society that we live, violence is associated with men. And the consequences of this, one of the consequences of this is of course that when is violence used? Usually it's used when there is no way of getting what you want. So it is a power game. So when somebody is fighting for power and it's not able to get it, they will use violence to get it. So that's why a war starts. So one country wants to dominate another country, and the only way to do it is starting a war. So it's using violence, right? So this could be the global point of view, war between countries, but it goes further than that. It stays not only about the global state, but goes deeper than that. It goes to a gang, for example. If there are two gangs, they start fighting to get the power, but it goes even further. It can go even to the house, and that's the problem. That's where it starts. So if we have this hierarchical organization, if we have this patriarchal system, and a man is not able to impose his power at home, he will use violence to do it. So, and even if a woman thinks she would like to have the power and she has the right to do it, it's more difficult for a woman to use violence to get it because we don't associate violence with women. So even a woman wants to get the power, she always got other ways to do it before she uses violence. And this is a general law, so it's not only about Mexico. And that's where the inequality has started. So violence doesn't have to be in a bigger space, it doesn't have to be only war, it doesn't have to be only fights and blood. It also can get into a routinary violence adaptation, so just a repression of a man over women at home. Just the fact that the woman doesn't have the right to do or to take decisions without asking the men, that's already violence. And the problem is that if we don't recognize that as violence, it can go far. We thought maybe the lowest level of violence that happens everywhere and every day and we don't even notice is subjugation. Like the fact that women accept they don't have the right to ask, to make their own decisions, and they always have to ask somebody else to do it. That's already violence. And we are used to it. That's a problem. We are used to do it, to accept it. So, we start with the hard topic, sorry. Femicides. The definition of femicide.
The World Health Organization defined femicide as it's generally understood to involve intentional murder or women because they are women, just gender biology. But broader definitions include any killings of women or girls. And in this context, this is one of the definitions, but every country and every organization take different aspects of it, because sometimes in Mexico it has to imply that there are some, like, the murder and the women have to be related to some degree. Otherwise, it's not femicide. And femicide is usually perpetrated by men, but sometimes female family members may be involved in this cycle, like they are. Femicides differ from male homicide in specific ways. For example, most cases of femicides are committed by partners or ex-partners. And involve ongoing abuse in the home, creates or intimidation, sexual violence, or situations where women have less power or fewer resources than the partner. So that's why somehow it went it could be right, but like this differences in resources, like the education or income or those resources, are actually related.
So the first case of femicides in Mexico started in Ciudad Juarez because it was the first city in Mexico that start finding out there are some patterns in the bodies found of women. So it was in 1993 when they started to recognize or to say, okay, there's something happening about women, and it doesn't mean it started there. So it's just the first year that feminist organizations were calling attention on that. In association with some police and some reporters, they were finding specific characteristics on young women killed. They were all dark skinned, they were poor, and most of them they were working in the maquiladoras or they were students. So this was one of the first characteristics they found in the.
Perhaps you can explain to the people where Ciudad Juarez is. I don't know if you remember.
Maquiladoras, there were big factories sorry?
They work with fabrics mostly.
Yeah, maquiladoras is.
Not really. The maquiladora is just a factory where they send like the main materials to build anything, and then you just make it.
To ensemble. To ensemble parts, for example, for cars. So they get the metal plates and all the small parts. There are big machines and a line, and people is just standing putting parts together. Sometimes they don't even put the whole car together. They just do the small parts together and then send them back.
But this one, the cases we're talking about were just employed from fabrics, right?
Yeah,
from
they were
clothes,
employed from fabrics.
Because they were women and they were clothes.
So it was also in 1993 when the NAFTA was signed. That means there was the free commerce between USA, Canada, and Mexico. So actually, I don't know if it was exactly that why they started to calm down about the problematic in that year. So, but the other thing that they recognized, it was most of the women, it was not like they found the body of a woman dead and she got tuberculosis or whatever and say, okay, it's a feminicide. It's not. So they would have always signs of violence. They were raped, and then most of them they were also strangulated. So, and all of them were showing these signs. So they were starting to find out what was happening. And the thing is that some of the bodies they found were few weeks old. So the women were not long ago killed, but some of them were killed since many years. So that's why they say it's something that started many years before that, but it was when they started talking about it and trying to make investigations about this. So I found a documentary that was made by Discovery Channel in 2009. So even other people started putting attention, and that was many years later. And it's 35 minutes long, so I won't put it all of it, because also it's in Spanish, so I'm sorry. But I took few cuts of it, so you can hear the declarations from people from there directly, so I don't have to tell you. And at the end I will make a bit of translation.
Más de 400 mujeres han sido asesinadas y más de 10 se mantienen desaparecidas en Ciudad Juárez.
Es el asesinato de una mujer por el hecho de ser mujer.
Todas las víctimas son jóvenes, de bajos recursos y muchas, empleadas de las maquiladoras, fuente de trabajo de la mayor parte de la población.
Nadie nos protege, estamos muy olvidados.
Mucha gente está en riesgo.
Hay varias hipótesis.
Esos casos están asociados a la violencia doméstica.
Estamos hablando de un individuo con este perfil sádico sexual.
Hay acusados y procesados, pero el misterio sigue sin resolverse.
No hay muchos responsables.
Parece que ser mujer es un delito.
Mi hija es Adriana Sarmiento Enríquez. Ella tiene 15 años de edad. Es una niña muy bonita. Ese día se fueron a la casa del amigo. El amigo no tiene carro. Le pidió el carro a su mamá para encaminarlas hacia esta calle y echarlas en un camión. Mi hija se tenía que bajar donde descarga ya toda la ruta, toda la gente. De ahí de esa calle, ella tiene que caminar una cuadra nada más para abordar la otra ruta, para venir a mi casa. Desde ahí no sabemos nada, no sabemos qué pasó.
Adriana es una de las mujeres desaparecidas en Ciudad Juárez, una ciudad ubicada en el estado de Chihuahua, a orillas del río Bravo y en la frontera con Estados Unidos. Con más de 2 millones de habitantes, esta metrópoli ha tenido un marcado crecimiento económico en los últimos años debido al auge de la industria maquiladora y se ha convertido en la 4ª ciudad más grande de México. Pese a que la tasa de desempleo es del 1%, una de las más bajas de todo el territorio mexicano, casi el 50% de los habitantes vive en condiciones de marginación y pobreza. Por su ubicación estratégica es una de las zonas fronterizas más codiciadas y también uno de los lugares más peligrosos.
Ciudad Juárez es una ciudad muy violenta por la situación estratégica en la que se encuentra, que estamos en frontera con Estados Unidos. Tenemos muchísimos problemas de migración, de falta de infraestructura, cuando digo falta de infraestructura, faltan policías, estaciones de policías, de bomberos, de rescate o emergencia, o servicios médicos. Por otro lado, tenemos al parecer un problema de violencia contra la mujer que se exacerbó hace unos años.
Es una ciudad que ha crecido rápidamente, se ha convertido por estar en la frontera y ser afectado por el tráfico de drogas, el tráfico de humanos y otras situaciones de crimen organizado, en una ciudad muy violenta. Aquí, en la frontera, llega la droga que viene desde Colombia y atraviesa a los Estados Unidos.
Ciudad Juárez es una ciudad fronteriza donde podemos decir que hay cierto grado de inseguridad, pero hay otros territorios dentro de esta ciudad fronteriza donde la gente vive muy tranquila y no hay problemas de violencia. Sí tienen problemas graves de crimen organizado, de narcomenudeo, pero están focalizados los territorios y la gente lo sabe.
Ciudad Juárez vive prácticamente de la industria maquiladora. Con la aprobación del Tratado de Libre Comercio NAFTA, firmado entre Canadá, Estados Unidos y México en el año 1993, una gran cantidad de empresas multinacionales han instalado sus ensambladoras en esta ciudad.
Aquí en Ciudad Juárez hay 3 ramas industriales que son las más importantes, es decir, la automotriz, la electrónica y los productos paramédicos. Actualmente podríamos decir que hay alrededor de 240,000 trabajadores dentro de la industria maquiladora en aproximadamente 235 plantas.
La mayoría de las maquiladoras son de capital extranjero. En muchas de ellas se fabrican piezas para armar en otros países grabadoras, televisores, cámaras fotográficas, artículos domésticos que todo el mundo usamos y necesitamos, ¿verdad? Pero hechas con la mano de obra femenina.
Los beneficios o el privilegio cuando contrata a una mujer, por mucho tiempo se decía que era porque las mujeres éramos más dóciles, que las mujeres teníamos más habilidades manuales, pero además también se ha dicho extraoficialmente que porque se supone que las mujeres vamos a crear menos conflictos laborales. Aquí en México, aquí en Ciudad Juárez, con lo que pagan un día de salario en Estados Unidos pagarían una hora.
Estamos hablando de un salario aproximadamente de 52 pesos diarios. Entonces este salario pues no alcanza para una mujer con 2 o 3 hijos. Entonces por eso es que las mujeres tienen que trabajar más horas de las 8 horas que reglamentariamente les correspondería según la ley del trabajo. También hay una serie de cosas muy graves como lo son el acoso sexual que se viven dentro de la industria maquiladora, sobre todo por hombres que tienen otros puestos más altos como supervisores y encargados de departamento.
Realmente si habláramos de la maquiladora estaríamos hablando de un sector ampliamente violador de los derechos humanos laborales.
So this is just an introduction about the situation around Ciudad Juárez. So for you, I make a small translation. So we're saying the factories started in the 90s.
I want to make a
yes.
comment.
Yeah.
I think that's very inaccurate because the maquiladora industry has been the income of Ciudad Juárez, I guess, since the 60s maybe.
Yes.
I have several relatives who have worked all their lives in before I was born. Maybe there was a boom in maquiladora, but the actual maquiladora, I mean, it was the main source of income in Ciudad Juárez since I've been raised. But other than that, it's accurate.
Okay. So they were saying, okay, there are factories, most of the factories want to employ women because they say they have more abilities with their hands to work there, and they are also more docile and avoiding the conflicts between them, so it's easier to work with them. But the second thing is also that if they are living with their family and also if they are the ones who are bringing the income to the house, they are willing to work more than 8 hours. So most of them, they are working over hours, and then in general, the working situation in these factories are breaking all labor laws. So they are going, so the laboral rights are not existing in those works most of the time. And what else they were saying? So they were saying also the Ciudad Juárez is also a very dangerous city because it's exactly on the border, and is one of the best ways to transport the drug from Mexico to USA. So the drugs that are coming through the country, or at least in that time, it was only coming through the country. Now
culpables.
Si tú encuentras a una chica asesinada y un mes o 2 meses después encuentras a otra 2 metros de donde había sido encontrada la anterior, eso te da como un mismo patrón y podemos pensar que el responsable es una misma persona o es un grupo bien organizado que secuestra, asesina, mutila a un grupo de chicas y viene a dejarlas a esta zona.
Inicialmente sí se pensaba que estábamos hablando del caso de un individuo con este perfil sádico sexual que estaba asesinando mujeres, pero ya conforme el problema fue agravándose, yo pienso que sí tenemos un grupo organizado que operaba con la finalidad de secuestrar y asesinar sistemáticamente mujeres.
Las líneas de investigación que señalan, bueno, a sospechosos son las siguientes: 2 asesinos en serie, por lo menos, que todavía dan sueltos, narcotraficantes que han asesinado con impunidad, 2 pandillas que han asesinado como manera de iniciar sus nuevos miembros, y luego los copycats, los imitadores que se han aprovechado de todos estos escenarios para ocultar sus crímenes.
Sí hemos tenido casos de asesino en serie, pero son los mínimos, han sido alrededor de 4 o 5 casos y ya están resueltos. Del 20% tenemos asuntos relacionados con narcomenudeo, mujeres que en ocasiones pues acuden a trabajar a ciertos lugares donde se da la comercialización de pequeñas dosis de drogas, han perdido la vida, ¿verdad? En ese tipo de situaciones. El 80% de esos casos están asociados a la violencia doméstica, es decir, a la violencia que ejercen los hombres dentro de su entorno familiar contra mujeres y que después son privadas de la vida. Realmente las causas están, sus raíces más profundas en lo que nosotros consideramos que es la misoginia y el machismo aquí en México.
okay, so these were three different points of view about the hypothesis about problematicness. So from one side, there is the forensic psychologist who says, okay, we are starting just finding a few women here, a few women there, whereas it was increasing the number of victims. It's much more easy to think that it's somebody doing like a routinary act. So it cannot be that only one person or only 3 persons are trying to kill women and then produce 500 disappeared women. So it's of course a problem which has a systematic. Then the reporter is saying that there were at least 2 open investigations for 2 serial killers. There were also 2 gangs who they think they were using it as an initiation ritual. So gangs who wanted to have new members, they wanted, they had the task to kill a woman and make this valuation and murder. And of course, the narco-traffic gangs, they were also doing it. And there were a few cases like a copycat, people who were just imitating this and taking advantage of the situation to do it also. This is the hypothesis from the reporter. And the hypothesis from the police, the last woman who was talking, the Justice Procuratory, she was saying 80% of the cases were home violence. There were only 2 cases about, or 4 cases about serial killer, and they are all solved. And since 2004 to the date of this documentary, who was 2008, so between 2004 and 2008, she says all cases, most of the cases are solved. They were domestic violence, and that's it. This is the official answer.
Hubo mucho ocultamiento de información, hubo hasta ocultamiento de cuerpos por parte del Estado, por parte de las autoridades estatales.
Había asesinos ligados con el crimen organizado, con el cártel de las drogas, con el poder. Entonces, al pertenecer a esta gran red de crimen organizado, gozaban una protección de los policías, de la Procuración de Justicia.
Puede ser que los policías en un tiempo estuvieron secuestrando mujeres para estos cárteles. Entonces no sabemos cómo fue que pasó, si la policía solamente colaboraba o también tenía una participación.
Alguien descubre un cadáver, avisa a la policía va ahí, están los policías alrededor tomando los datos, sacando las fotos, y se sabe, por ejemplo, que algunos de esos policías son sicarios y que tuvieron que ver con esa muerte.
Hay policías buenos, o sea, claro que sí, pero realmente el sistema ya está demasiado infiltrado, demasiado corrompido como para crear una sensación de seguridad y de confianza en la ciudadanía.
Las autoridades saben quiénes son porque ya han sido investigados. Su informe fue entregado en 2 ocasiones a los superiores y nada se hizo, porque son personas intocables, se trata de gente intocable.
No hay gente poderosa, porque la mayoría de los casos son de violencia doméstica. Creo que esa percepción que se tiene es por la gran impunidad que se generó del 2004 hacia atrás, de 1993 al 2004, que no se tenía una idea clara de qué era lo que estaba sucediendo en Ciudad Juárez. Y bueno, del 2004 a este año, a que es el 2008, el 80% está totalmente resuelto. Tenemos solamente 7 casos sin resolver, de alrededor de 70 casos, por ejemplo.
Of course, the police will always say everything is solved, everything was domestic violence. And in 2009, the rate of feminicides in Ciudad Juárez, just in Ciudad Juárez, was 19.1 per 100,000 female. So, and it was in average 2.5% of the population at the national level. So the reporter was saying there were many cases where the police were going to look for the body, to take the evidence, yeah, to collect the evidence for the homicide. And sometimes it was also that they were part of the gang. So they were involved already in the homicide before the body was there. So they knew everything about it. Of course, they were then hiding the information. They were also hiding bodies. There were reports already from the police station to the higher levels, where it never reached the higher levels because a big part of the system was involved in it. So they were themselves kidnapping women to deliver them to the narco gangs. And well, with this kind of situation, it's difficult to fight against this. Until 2008, there were 400 bodies found, killed women found, and there were 1,000 missing. So it's not possible that the procurator is saying, so it's only 7 cases open, the rest is solved. If there were 1,000 women missing, so it's more than just 7. And, the documentary was done in 2008. 2009 was the presentation from Discovery Channel, and the situation went on. And 2000, there were one of the women with the black hair. She was part of the organization called "Let Our Children Come Back Home," or "Girls Come Back Home." Que nuestras hijas regresen a casa. So in 2011, an activist woman, Susana Chavez, was also murdered, raped and murdered. And she was an activist for this situation in Ciudad Juárez. She was from Ciudad Juárez and she was killed in Chihuahua the state. And she was demanding clarification for the murders, for the homicides, and maybe against the violence in the whole country. In 2011, she was a victim of it. And the problem is that it didn't stop there. So I think if you don't pay attention to a problem which has that magnitude, if you don't consider it as a serious problem, it will grow up. 2012, there were some studies made by INEGI, National Institute of Geography, Statistics and Informatics. He's the one responsible for making the counting of population, everything in the country. And they were giving out some numbers about this problematic in the whole country. So the interesting thing is that in the report of 2012, the word femicide was not appearing in this report. They were using only the word homicide, violence against women, injuries or legal intervention, and they don't recognize it has to be called femicide. So the numbers about Mexico City, it is that there were only 30 cases recorded involved with homicide of women. And, but from 2007 until 2010, the rate of homicides between women raised from 2 to 4.4% of the population per 100,000. In the state of Mexico, which is the state next to Mexico City, and it is now to date has been even going more having higher rates of homicides for women than in Ciudad Juarez. So this report was from 2013, so until 2011 there were 570 disappeared women, which means it increased in 1,225% from the last report. Since in 2007 there were only 43 cases for missing women. They say that in the state of Mexico, the release from Millennium says that 98% of the murders were solved, apparently. I suppose that's the same as in Ciudad Juarez, they were home violence. But in 2012, this was the third case of crimes in the whole country, the city, well, the state of Mexico.
Actually, the president Enrique Peña Nieto was the governor of the state of Mexico in that time, and there are some new books and some releases, like some reports that actually said that during his period as governor, the government decreased the numbers. That we can actually don't get direct information because it was just made up. Yeah, and maybe that's why that's a low number. But this state is the first now it has the highest rate of homicides. Yeah.
So it doesn't stay there. In Jalisco, there was an increase of 31% of homicides against women. And the mayor just said it must be because women are getting more involved in the organized crime activities, so that's why they are more killed. In Guanajuato, the rate raised from 1.6 to 5.1 monthly, measured between 2006 and 2012. Also in comparison from 2006 to 2012. And the problem is that in this case, for example, there are a lot of hidden information and the police is not even taking an account on it. So they are refusing to give numbers about homicides of women in Guanajuato. So there is no possible way to make an official count. In Puebla, the rate also increased from 2007 to 2010 between 1.5% and 1.8%. The problem is that until that time, there were 1,300 cases of missing women and 275 killed, and there is no case of investigation for any of these cases. And in Veracruz is similar. There were 728 murders in between 2000 and 2010. And in that same period, there were 5,000 women disappeared without any information on them now. So this is just to say, well, it started at one point, it was focused in one area, and now it's growing everywhere. And just those were information from inside the country. That was the number given by INEGI, the National Statistic Institute. And there was a report from human rights given from non-governmental institutions, organizations in 2013. And just to go, well, the report is about general injuries in human rights in the whole country. So just few parts that I picked up for this, it was that so there were 1,235 cases of women murder between 2010 and June 2011, so 1 year and a half. And this was counting only in 8 states of the country, so the most violent of them, not everywhere, so some of the cases before. And only 4% of these cases were sentenced. Well, the report was saying they don't know this sentence, maybe it was condemned, so the person who was in the court got free, and only a few of them got punished out of 4%. So in general, Mexico is they made a report that there is torture and disappear in general in Mexico, not only for women. And in Ciudad Juarez, it was the worst case, and Chihuahua was the worst case, where there is no sentence at all and only one open case about torture in the whole state. Concerning directly to women, it says that the vulnerability of women has increased since the last report, and the violence in hand of military or organized crime as well. Most of this violence has been realized, done through the military or the organized crime groups. So they are taking out the hypothesis of home violence. In general, well, the Observatory of Femicides, there's already an organization especially working on femicides. They say that there are 3,900, about 4,000 missing women in 15 states, just between January 2011 and June 2012. And half of them were between Chihuahua and state of Mexico. And half of these cases were also women between 11 years and 20 years. So children are also included, so girls are also affected. And there were more than 4,000 femicides, just counting 13 states of the country. So for those who doesn't know, there are 32 states. So it's only on 1/3 of the country there are already for more than 4,000 femicides. Well, they also, as Gary already said, they are pointing out that the law for life free of violence is not working. So they should work on it. And there are requests. In that time, they were requesting the states to issue this law so they can work on it. And well, until now you said all of them are included. And yeah, and that's it. So we are open now for discussion and to hear your opinion.
About that many cases of home violence or homicides in the family are declared as suicides. So there was one case, husband killed the wife, then the police was coming, the sons said, okay, it was the father, but the police said, no, it was suicide.
Are the police there?
And I think it was in Guanajuato or something.
Yeah.
But I think it's happens anywhere. And then months later, he was going to the police with the husband and said, okay, it was homicide. The police said first sent him back to home because he was not with passport or anything at the police station. Okay. And then he was coming back and said, okay, I was it. And then they said, okay, now we have resolved it. It was a suicide, so we can't do anything. And I think this is also a problem that there are many cases. They just declared it as suicides.
Yes.
And actually, it's a little bit complicated to count like femicides because they have to be related to gender. Like any homicide cannot be only because they're women, but it has to be related to the gender aspect. So yeah, it's a little complicated and the system really this distortion that's in it.
So there was also another case, it was also on Ciudad Juarez. A 15-year-old girl was killed, and they found her body 3 weeks later. And when they found the body, the police was trying to point out her father. So they were saying that it was her father for a few days, and of course it wasn't true. So her father was able to went out of this situation. And a few weeks later, they put the picture of an ex-boyfriend of the girl in the scene. So this was one count as a home violence because they said it was a boyfriend, even though it was not the case. And there were a lot of cases like that. So they were pointing out somebody, even though they were having proofs and they were proving in court they were innocent. They had the proof to be innocent, and a lot of them died before they got out of jail. So they were in jail, they were proving that they were innocent, and a few days before they went out of jail, they were mysteriously dead. So that also happened as well. So maybe I can put the happy song so we can go and very home.
Do you have any idea on the ratio between the crime that is related to femicide to the crime that is not related to femicide? Like, to get an idea. Because if you read the newspapers in Ciudad Juarez, it's the most depressing thing in the universe. And usually, if you read the newspapers in Ciudad Juarez, the Diario Juarez, I mean, just go over days, is very depressive, but because you see, I don't know, murder between teenagers, rape between men,